Evening, I now call to order the meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Apache Junction. Today's date is January 14th, 2025, and the time is 7 p.m. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Rudy, can I please get a roll call? No problem. This ain't waiting on us.
Well,
All right. Whenever you're ready, you can do a roll call, please.
Okay. Chairman Hanchy.
Here.
Vice Chair Barker. Vice Chair Barker.
Vice Chair Barker, are you here?
That means she is, I think.
don't bother.
Was that you, Robin?
That is me.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gage.
Here.
Commissioner Starr.
Here.
Commissioner Bigelow.
Here.
Commissioner Mikeland.
Here.
Commissioner Callan.
Here.
We have 7 present. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman. For the folks at home, if you would please mute your microphone between the times you speak, so that way we don't hear dogs barking and cars passing by, that kind of thing. Thank you. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda and minutes?
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented and approve the minutes from the December 10th, 2024 regular meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Rudy, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Callan.
Yes.
Chairman Hanchy.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barker.
Yes.
Commissioner Gage.
Yes.
Commissioner Starr.
Yes.
Commissioner Bigelow.
Yes.
Commissioner Mikeland.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rudy. All right, there's one public hearing this evening, consideration of case P-24-1-AM, as in Mary, a proposed text amendment of the Apache Junction Zoning and Ordinance Article 1-5, zoning bulk and use regulations to modify certain CUP and land use decision process. Nick, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Hanchy. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm Nick Leftwich, planner for the Development Services Department of the City of Apache Junction. I'll be presenting tonight the case information for P-24-1-AM, a proposed text amendment to the zoning ordinance, Article 1-5, zoning bulk and use regulations, specifically the land use tables found therein. So for context, we've been working on this text amendment for quite a while, starting about a year ago on December 5th, 2023, where the City Council held a discussion about the use of conditional use permits for major, lasting, and impactful land use decisions. The City Council noted that some land use decisions, like the conversion of commercial properties to multifamily residential properties, are effectively like rezonings in their lasting and impactful nature, and the effect on the land use of those properties. Currently, the City Council is involved whenever it comes to a rezoning or a plan development, but many of these land use decisions that are of a similar impact only happen through the Planning and Zoning Commission review through mechanisms like specifically the conditional use permit process. And they had noted that the city council would like to be involved in these high-impact, lasting land use decisions for a variety of reasons, both the weight and just their due diligence of it. So with that, they provided a direction for staff to return with options regarding different ways at which we might amend the zoning ordinance language in order to address these concerns. At which point, a few weeks later, on January 16th, 2024, staff presented options. We gave them a couple different options regarding how we might address different concerns, one of which would have fundamentally changed the conditional use permit process itself. But the option that they ultimately elected and that they directed staff towards was to modify the existing Article 1.5 land use tables in order to more finely and precisely tweak which land uses would require city council or would involve city council approval. And specifically, we then took that and reviewed the land use table under specific criteria that I'll get into in just a moment, in order to evaluate which land uses are more appropriate for city council review, which ones are very sensitive to the community, may require some of the political input of a city council member as elected officials. So, under this direction, as noted, we reviewed the land use tables and have made the following proposed changes. The first of which is just as we proceeded through the land use tables, we made note of which land uses and land use categories would be better served either as a rezoning or whether or not it even needed a conditional use permit process. And more specifically, which conditional use permit requiring land uses would be potentially better served through additional city council review and approval. So, as a mechanism of the code text itself, we have introduced this requirement through the introduction of a footnote, specifically just noting that the noted land uses with the accompanying footnote would be subject to city council review and approval through a public hearing. Just in addition, currently a rezoning is very similar to a conditional use permit process procedurally, where both of them are presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review. Currently, rezonings are just presented for recommendation and then forwarded to the City Council. In this case, the land uses that have this footnote would go through a similar process. They would still come to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review, and in this case, a recommendation, and would be subject to the final decision-making authority of the City Council. Again, specifically for these noted uses. Just as another minor note, while we were reviewing all the different zoning ordinances throughout the valley for comparison in order to figure out best practices, in order to figure out what would be most appropriate, it was noted that most, if not all, of the zoning ordinance land use tables that we observed just used a little different symbology that we found a little bit easier to read, a little bit easier to identify. And so we have updated without changing any of the meaning, we have updated the symbology of the land use tables just to facilitate the same ease of reading to match the other cities in the valley. So, the significant part of this text amendment is that it introduces the decision for the city council, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. For these impactful, permanent land or lasting high-impact land use decisions, we tried to evaluate what would require city council input, city council involvement. And so 3 primary criteria were involved in this determination. The first is this land use truly conditional? Like, is this something that a conditional use permit should be used for? By nature, a conditional use permit is meant to review like the operating conditions of a site, whether it is, a nuisance to the neighborhood in noise and odor, in configuration, and the conditional use permit process can be used in order to better configure those things and potentially revoke a conditional use permit in the instance that someone fails to meet those operating conditions. We have been using the conditional use permit process just as a secondary level of administrative review, but in many cases, such as I have some examples of non-conditional uses that we've been using for conditional use permits, such as residential development in a commercial zone. Or you would have something significant like a cemetery where we're not going to say no to someone. It's like, oh, no one wants this cemetery here anymore. You have to go. That's the kind of use that currently is prescribed, the use of conditional use permit and review of conditional use permit in the table. But functionally speaking, is not revocable, is not really conditional. So we have evaluated the land use table based on this criteria. The second criteria is the land use of such high or significant impact that the decision would best be made through the elected leadership of City Council. High impact in this case would be land uses that generate exceptional levels of activity or disturbance, far beyond what we normally see and what we normally evaluate, such as things like amusement parks. A lot of these really big, massive proposals that we don't really see often, but certainly if an airport were to come into the city of Apache Junction and we were trying to determine an appropriate location, the City Council would like to be involved with that because of how impactful that would be on the community. A significant impact, on the other hand, would be sensitive land use decisions, such as if, hypothetically, someone were to introduce a proposal for a prison within the city of Apache Junction. Right now, the land use table only requires a conditional use permit, and that would, of course, generate quite a lot of feelings within the community, and the City Council would like to be part of those more sensitive kind of decisions. The third land use, or the third evaluation criteria specifically, is this land use better served with a rezoning or a plan development? Somewhat similar to the first example, but a little bit more narrow in how it's used, such as if we were to have like a major shopping mall development, that is the kind of thing that would be better handled through a plan development process that involves a lot more coordination, a lot more of what we see in the plan development as we get into the narrower conditions. And that's the kind of thing that would require probably something like development agreements or just a lot of coordination with the City Council. And so those items we found to be better suited through either a plan development or a rezoning anyway. And so in some of the cases, those just were given the extra step of City Council review.
Isn't that how we do it now anyway? I mean, if there was a shopping mall to come in, it would need the rezoning. And I'm just kind of confused. I mean, since I've been up here, there've been 2 or 3 conditional use permits that we've acted on. I don't know.
I think
just
only 2.
yeah.
Chair Hanshey, Commissioner Gage. We do often end up on a staff level trying to guide people or trying to guide applicants and developers through this better tailored process of a plan development. Often people end up needing it, whether it's because of a height deviation or something that by statutory power or conditional use permit can't address in the first place. So we often funnel people that direction anyway. Technically speaking, the code only requires a conditional use permit for something of that scale. And this is more of a process just to kind of catch that from not going through the proper channels.
So an applicant could insist that you try to conditional use permit. Is that the
That is
issue?
correct.
Okay.
And we have seen
That makes
that in
more-
a couple
that
of
makes
these
sense now.
instances that have been
So
adjusted.
the applicant could try and force his way through the system with a conditional use permit. And that makes sense to me.
That is correct.
Why we would change this.
But it'd still have to come through us, and we'd have to vote it in.
Well, yeah, but our decision is final on it.
Right.
So that's what the issue is. Like I was having a hard time understanding
I understand.
why we're changing something that isn't broken.
We often, again, on a practical level, try to guide the people through the proper procedures and processes. That's just one of the roles of staff, planning staff within the city. But occasionally, we come
Gotcha.
across those situations
Yeah,
where
that's why we have a board of adjustment for when people get upset for what we do here. Right?
Thank you for the question. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, perfectly
Doesn't-
fine.
Excuse me, does it not duplicate the effort on high impact? You know, we review it, we approve or disapprove it, then it goes back to the city council, they get approval or disapproval authority. But they're gonna do the reviewing as well, That's the way I read it here.
In that case, in many instances, they, like, such as with a rezoning, they do often review the same things that the Planning and Zoning Commission reviews. You are, of course, a specialized board dedicated to reviewing land use policy and decisions, and the City Council is on a broader level, the legislative body of the city when it comes to being elected and voting. So when it comes to rezonings or plan developments, they do often double up. They often review the same reports that I provide you, maybe even watch through these meetings as well. In this case, this is specifically implementing a very similar process that for higher impact, lasting land use decisions, what the City Council already does with land use decisions such as rezonings, they would also do for these specific classes of conditional use permits.
So so what this change is basically doubling the effort then, because basically somebody can come appeal to us, and if they didn't like our decision, they can go back and appeal to the city council, and they can reverse it for political reasons or whatever.
That currently is how conditional use permits may be used. If someone were to appeal a decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission, it currently gets, currently the law is written so that if someone does not like your decision, they can, and it doesn't even just have to be the applicant. If there is an aggrieved party, such as a neighbor, member of the community, they can appeal to the city council. This more cements the process for the decisions that the city council said and indicated to us, we would like to be part of those decisions. So while it does involve a whole second set of eyes, in this case, the city council themselves have asked, we would like to also be reviewing these land use decisions because of their impact. So.
It's like, I don't know, it sounds like duplication of effort to me, I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong, the way it's written.
Well, right now, other than conditional uses, we don't really approve or disapprove anything, we just send a recommendation.
I know, they always, they either approve or disapprove, and maybe basically rubber stamp it after we do it, right? Basically.
Or they can go against.
They go against, but yeah. But,
A lot of times they
but
do
the-
what they want to do anyway.
Mr. Chair, if I can, I know Sydney was about to say something too. You sure? Because you could say it. That's okay with me. Because I know you're going to say the same thing. There was some concern on the council in the last election, not this past one, but the one before, where some council members were concerned that they should be the ones that have the final say on these big ticket type of issues. So not that planning and zoning messed anything up, but I think some of the newer council members would like to, and some of the old ones too, wanted to have that authority. So they wanted to do it so that, yeah, you'd be a recommending body, and they would certainly look at your recommendations, but they would also look at the ultimate decision. And I think some elected officials, even in different cities, feel, we should be the ones making those bigger decisions. But they do want your recommendation. That is not to say that they don't want the recommendation anymore. They do want the recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Barker?
as a former council person, I think this is a good plan because there are some CUPs that we look at as a planning and zoning commission, and we're looking at land use. We're not looking at all the rest of the impact of that particular case. And I see why some of the council members may feel that they would like to also take an in-depth look at it.
I agree. I mean, I understand why they're doing it as well. But you're not done yet, Nick, so
Thank you.
go ahead and finish.
Thank you.
Right.
Just as a matter of next steps, based on your recommendation tonight, we will forward that recommendation to the city council. And on February 3rd, they will hold a work session, first in order to discuss essentially everything that has happened as well as your discussion itself. And then a couple weeks after that, they will actually hold the public hearing on Tuesday, February 18th, at which point they will vote on whether or not to adopt this text amendment, or if they have changed their mind by any chance, they will take it from there. If you have any other questions, though, I'm happy to answer, happy to help.
And from my understanding, reading through the table and everything, basically on the one where it has the C9s, them are really the only ones that will now have city council approval versus what used to just be planning and zoning.
Chair Hanchey, that's correct, yes. So, again, the footnote 9 has been added based on the criteria that we evaluated of high impact, significant impact, and what uses were really better served as, whether it's conditional use permit or not.
I noticed on the table, a lot of things were changed other than the footnote 9, that there was a lot of things that were changed from, it totally eliminated like a non-residential use that would, used to be able to be permitted, and then now it's not permitted at all. I mean, negated it out. A lot of different changes were done to the tables. That alone, just the footnote ones, but the different ones as well,
Yes.
were totally eliminated or yeah, well, totally eliminated on the charts.
Yes, Chair Hanchey, Commissioner Starr.
Yeah.
As part of this process, there were certain calibrations that were made. As I said, sometimes there was a consideration made, does this actually need a conditional use permit, or is this the proper zoning of it? Is this something that deserves a rezoning? So there are some changes that were made independent of the footnote in order to better prompt a rezoning decision, but something that wouldn't be addressed through a conditional use permit, or wouldn't be properly addressed through a conditional use permit, rather. So, for instance, one of the changes that was made, some of the land use table categories have been in there, and whether or not we've ever actually been asked a question, such as having a dentist office in a public institutional zone, of which there's very few in the city. This is a public institutional zone building. It's meant for government buildings and schools, but for some reason, the zoning code said, if you want a dentist office, that's a permitted use in this. Now, shy of some kind of government-operated office, which would fall in its own category anyway, if someone wanted to take a parcel and open that was zoned for a park or a school, open a dentist office, it'd be better served with a rezoning. Rather than it being a conditional use permit process that gets sent to the council, that was one of the things that in this evaluation we determined that's just better served with a rezoning to something like a B1 or B2. So some of those changes have been made that, still in line with these criteria, we believe are better served now.
And the way I'm looking at this, I mean, we don't want to rezone stuff through a conditional use permit. That should go through a zoning process. And that, I think that's all this is doing, is streamlining it and taking away the things that shouldn't ever go through a CUP versus a zoning. Because, we don't want to make a big decision and, allow, an industrial to go into a residential area through a cut. So, and I don't know what all the different little loopholes we had, because I'm not an expert on it, but I think it just closes a lot of those little loopholes, which is what you've been telling us through this. So I think that's the gist of this, is there were some loopholes in there that they're just closing, that because it should go through a planning and zoning hearing, not a CUP.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just, when I was like, I'm being a newbie on this particular thing, I noticed, there's tons of different changes been made. But, yeah, I can understand that they shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Right.
Yeah,
That was something that we noticed. Here's like a small minor one. This one was one of my favorite examples of when someone asked me why it is that way, I did not have an answer for them. And on the very first page, somewhere in the way that of the commercial table, somewhere in the way of how the land use table was formatted previously, there was a difference between motor vehicle dealer and a motorcycle dealer, and technically speaking, you couldn't sell motorcycles at the same place as motor vehicles. And that was a small change that kind of falls outside the periphery, but was just a common sense. In practice, it came up And this was the best time to address those very minor, this shouldn't need a rezoning, this should just be streamlined. There's very few of those, but there are some that had that kind of recalibration. So,
How do other cities deal with it? How does ours compare to Gilbert's or Chandler's?
I actually had a table of how every single city handled the conditional use permit process. I unfortunately don't recall exactly how Chandler and exactly how Gilbert handled it. I do know there was a broad variety in how different cities handled it. As we looked at Mesa, Mesa was probably the model that we kind of based this process off of, because within their land use table, they had a specific category similar to conditional use permit. I think they had like an AUP, but in that case, it was something that went through the city council as opposed to just the regular CUP. Gilbert, I think, if I recall correctly, maybe both Gilbert and Chandler, I believe that they actually had more power in the Planning and Zoning Commission, where just in the way that they structured it, some cities had the city council more and more involved, and some cities allocated more power to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Actually, let me step that back. If I recall correctly, I think their town council, specifically Gilbert's town council, wanted to be more involved. But I can get you the clear answer. I had that table, and I just don't have the every city by city.
Just that you've compared them works for me. Yeah, I mean, at some point, the city council's going to get overwhelmed by all these things.
I mean, there's some municipalities
Yeah.
that move planning and zoning, they hear it, and city council don't even look at rezoning.
That's right.
I think
So-
Tucson's that way, or Marana, one of them down there, when I went to one of the meetings.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
some of those cities are charter cities,
Right.
so they have basically their own constitution for certain things.
Right.
And their charter might say that the council has to do certain CUPs, or the P&Zs authorized to do certain CUPs. So it's kind of hard to compare to the big cities.
Right. I'm just saying, I know there's different rules all across the state.
These were considerations that we put forth to the council when we originally, it's unfortunately been about a year. We've been working on this for quite a bit, but that was when I presented the research of what each city did. That's part of why it's been a bit. But it was something that we looked at because, as was just noted, city council could get overwhelmed if we sent every single conditional use permit to them. That was one of the alternatives that they originally discussed of what if the city council reviewed every single conditional use permit. And there's quite a lot that's considered potentially under a conditional use permit. Everything from a sign package to a landscape modification, things that we may not see as often, but frankly do not require that level of management of the city council. So we presented comprehensively, hey, this is what all the cities in the valley do. This is the scale of how involved you could get. You could be involved in every single decision. The Planning and Zoning Commission could be involved even more heavily and given even more authority. And the discretion of the city council was, we would like to be involved in these high-impact, significant land use decisions, but they did not determine that they needed to be involved in every single type of conditional use permit. And that's how we ultimately ended up with this draft.
Yeah, I don't-
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
could I ask if there was a specific case that brought this up? Because I know that Planning and Zoning has dealt with several pretty big cases that were very controversial. Was there a specific case that brought this on?
Chair Hanchey, Vice Chair Barker, no specific case was noted in the discussion. The council member who rose the issue first primarily identified the conversion of commercial to multifamily residential. And I believe, as Joel said earlier, it's not that they noted any manner of failing. As the Planning and Zoning Commission itself has noted, you have been apprehensive yourself in some of these land use decisions in terms of when is the line, when is too much, and there was no criticism of any singular decision. It's like I think in every case, the Planning and Zoning Commission has carefully considered and weighed the facts, but just as the City Council, they wanted to be sure that when it came to these significant land use decisions, any kind of land use conversion, that I think just especially as we look at the downtown, they would be more and more involved in fine-tuning these things.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Barker?
Yes, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Think I'm good. Thank you, Nick. And it is a public hearing, so we gotta open it to the public. Anybody from the public like to come and address us? Going once?
I own a piece of property just down the street at 597 East Old West Highway.
Can you please state your name and your
Yep,
address?
sorry, Eugene D. Spain. And my home address is in Mesa, but I own the property here in AJ.
Can you still state your address for the record, please?
Yeah, 2550, oops, sorry, just moved. 10014, 10064 East Satellite Drive, Mesa.
Thank you.
Sorry. We've got two pieces of land on Old West Highway, and the mobile home park sits back in on the south side of the road. And I was here basically knowing that you guys were going to discuss this tonight. And I guess my question would be, is the city moving toward the 24 freeway? And I remember when Gilbert moved their head offices, it seemed way off in the distance down south, and it's now growing up around it. But my question would be, are apartments possible along Old West Highway? Because I've got the two pieces of land, I've got almost 1,000 feet of frontage, and I just wonder what the best use for that land is.
We're not going to be able to address your question
Right.
here, but I'm sure you could speak to these guys after the meeting. They
Right.
could give you better direction on that.
I guess that was my question, is which way is the city
We're not here
council
for the
leaning?
questions. This is here for you to state your opinions or anything on the issues.
No, except you guys are doing a great job. Thank you.
All right. Seeing that there's nobody else in the audience, I'm going to close the public's. All right. Any discussion anybody want, or do you want to go straight to a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Barker.
I'd like to make a motion. I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Apache Junction City Council the approval of text amendment case P-24-1-AM, an amendment to the Apache Junction City Code, Volume 2, Land Development Code, Chapter 1, Zoning Ordinance, Article 1-5, Zoning Bulk and Use Regulations.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Rudy, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Callan,
Yes.
Chairman Hanchey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Barker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage,
Yes.
Commissioner Starr,
Yes.
Commissioner Bigelow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mikeland.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. This case will go to council with your favorable recommendation. Work session on February 3rd, public hearing on February 18th.
Thank you, Rudy. There's no old business?
No, sir.
No new business?
No, sir.
Information reports, director report?
None this evening, Mr. Chairman. Other than
All right.
Happy New Year. We got a lot of work coming up and a lot of home construction going on, and we are not slowing down.
Sounds great.
2,200 permits in the last fiscal year,
Wow.
which is a record for us.
And I'm sure it's trending up.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause I know they're starting to build a lot more down there.
Oh, yeah.
And do we have a motion to select the next meeting date?
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on January 28th, 2025 at 7 PM in the City Council chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard. In the event there are no items to be brought forward to the commission, these meetings may be canceled, notification of cancellation, properly posted, and the commission's notified by staff.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Rudy, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Mikeland,
Yes.
Commissioner Callan,
Yes.
Chairman Hanshi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Barker,
What? Yes.
Commissioner Gage,
Yes.
Commissioner Starr,
Yes.
Commissioner Bigelow.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rudy. I now adjourn the meeting at 7:36 PM.